Hi, this is video number 31. Today is Groundhog Day. Imagine that. This is the official Groundhog Day. I'm not quite sure if Punxsutawney Phil actually saw his shadow, but pretty sure you don't care about that. I don't care about that either, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I wanted to come on and talk about something that someone had asked me about. I think I mentioned this in the last video, distractions. I've been looking through the Neuroscience for Dummies that I had talked about in one of the last videos, and I took a page of notes. I was thinking maybe I would talk a little bit about some of the things I'm learning, kind of start from scratch and go on. And I've cheated some. I looked through the book, and there's some really interesting stuff about ECT and different kinds of things and theories for depression and different sorts of the stresses we have in our lives. I haven't read it all or anything. That part of it was very interesting. At some point I would like to talk about that. But anyway, today I'll start with distractions, and then if I have some time I'll go through some of the notes I took for the neuroscience. But anyway, distractions. A lot of people want to know, like, well, what did you do exactly for distractions? Now, everybody has their own way of distracting, I'm sure of that. And I can tell you about things that I did. I'm sure there are many more things. And there were things that I know some people can do to distract that I could not do. So I'll start here and go for it and see where we get. And okay, one of the things that I did was puzzles. I have mentioned this before in videos. Any kind of puzzle that I was capable of doing. In the newspaper every day there were puzzles. There were word jumbles, there were word searches, there were cryptic quotes, Sudoku puzzles, crosswords. I did most of them. Most of the time I got the answer, but it was a real challenge because my brain was fuzzy, plus I would get like really anxious and panicky if I couldn't get the answers right away. Jigsaw puzzles, that was something different. For some reason I could not do jigsaw puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles. I've done hundreds of them in my life. I almost always have one on the card table in this room, and I'm doing it almost continuously when I'm down here. I'll do a few pieces now and then, but in withdrawal, for some reason, I couldn't do them. They made me anxious. I couldn't be still, and there was something about the spatial part of it that just freaked me out. I couldn't do it. So I stayed away from jigsaw puzzles. I was just like spatially disoriented, I guess. I don't know. Every day I would try to go somewhere. Some days it was just out to get the mail, or just out in the yard. Most days I would go with my wife somewhere, usually to the grocery store. There's one like 5 minutes from here. I would push the cart so I wouldn't fall into the aisles. I her into the shelves in the aisles. I talked about that before. I would go to fabric stores with her. She sews and quilts. And I would just kind of like wander around in the store, and kind of in a daze. I would go to what's it called, arts and crafts shops, and pick out. Usually, I'll pick out a latch hook kit for something for me to do. And I'll talk about the latch hooking later. It's something I took up while I was in withdrawal. I had done it years earlier, and so I began doing it again in withdrawal. I would pace. I paced an awful lot in the mornings, especially back and forth and back and forth. And I know a lot of people do that. It's a good way to kill time, but it's part of the anxiety too. It's just anxious. You have all this energy. You're exhausted, but you pace. I did that a lot. I went for walks. I've talked about this in some of my writings. I had this one walk. It was a 66-minute walk. I've talked about it before. I did that one an awful lot in the first, right after I quit drinking. I did stay home for quite some time, and I would take this 66-minute walk every day, and I did that for quite a few months until at some point I couldn't do it anymore. It was just like I felt like I was wasting my time or something. I wasn't getting better. I thought, I'm not gonna take that walk anymore. I kind of got more scared too. I don't know why. But that was the walk where I think I've talked about this on videos I've written about it. For some reason, I would find it necessary, I don't know why, to wave to people going by in cars. And back then my beard was like a lot longer. I wasn't keeping it trimmed or anything. Um, and these people must have thought I was crazy because every day, like I say, people would go by and I'd wave. And some would wave back and some not. And somehow I thought that was normal. I wouldn't do that now. I mean, I take that walk now a good bit. I don't wave to people. In fact, I'm kind of embarrassed. Kate, I think maybe they remember me, like that's a crazy old guy. But anyway, I think I did it just to show I can do this. I'm not too afraid to let people know I'm here. For some reason, I thought it would help me heal, or I don't know. I'm not sure why I waved, but I did. And there were other walks too in the neighborhood. I remember one walk. It was the beginning of the 66-minute walk, and someone was looking for another place in the development, somebody's home, and they were asking me some things. Or no, it was a business. They were looking for a business, which was not in our development, but somewhere else. And somehow, the guy's, he's looking at me, he's talking to me, and I'm just freaking out inside. But somehow my brain was able to actually get through the whole process and tell him exactly where this place was, how to get out of the development, and where to go. And I remember for a moment feeling like good about myself. Yeah, I still got it. But as soon as he was gone, I started freaking out again. Like, oh my God, I just talked to someone. Someone approached me. So that's weird. I guess that's how it is in withdrawal for most people. You can make yourself look and think normally for a while, and then you freak out when the pressure's off. You kind of freak out. So that was something that happened on one of my walks. I would go out Friday nights to dinner with my family. I've talked about this before. We would always go to this one place. I would get the chicken nachos. I wouldn't talk. I would just be very zombie-like. But there was something about it that was comforting, because I have a great family. And I remember thinking, if I don't go out, and it was uncomfortable to be around other people, if I don't go out, I'm stuck at home. And being at home was kind of like, it's not your prison, but it feels like prison because you spend most of your time there. And it was almost like, to me, staying home was like being defeated, like acknowledging I'm defeated. I can't. It's a psychological thing for me. I know it's not that way for everybody, but that's how it was for me. So Friday nights I went out to dinner. I also did the EFT tapping. You tap on your nose and your forehead. You say these different things. And I found that it was a good distraction. It made me focus on like where to tap and what to say, which was a good thing because it took my mind, if only for seconds at a time, off of how bad I felt, off of my misery. So that's something that I did every now. I didn't do it every day, but I did it. I did it a good bit. I think it actually did help me. I did guided meditation and relaxation early in my withdrawal for the first few months. After dinner, I would go upstairs, sit in an easy chair, and put this CD on, my headphones, and this guy with this really cool voice, nice, calm voice. And I would listen to him, and I would be tense. Like the relaxation part, I almost always fell asleep, almost always. And that kind of was my goal. You're not supposed to, I guess, but I always did. And then there was the guided meditation where you're kind of doing things and relaxing. There was the tensing. I guess that's the relaxation, the tensing one where you tense different muscles of your body and relax them. And that was pretty good. That did help me, but one of the problems I had was one of our neighbors has a big dog, and for some reason he would bark at that time, and that just freaked me. And that was even on the other side of the house, but just hearing a dog barking just was too much for me, just freaked me out. But anyway, that's how that was. If it wouldn't have been for the dog, maybe it'd gone a little better for me. But I didn't do that the whole way through my withdrawal. That was just the first few months. Let's see, forums. I didn't discover the forums till I was like 6 or 7 months off. The first one I went to was called Benzo Island, which I was only on there like a month or so, and then it was no longer available. And that helped me from the perspective of validation. That was somewhere to go. There were other people suffering too. And I remember whining there and saying I'm off 7 months, and they said, well, 7 months is not that long. You still got a ways to go probably. Didn't care to hear that. After Benzo Island, I went to another forum, which was around for a couple months, and then it went down. There were a lot more people in that forum. That's where I printed out most of my success stories that I read. So after that forum, and that was a validation forum too. The thing I didn't like though was they would get into little arguments now and then about supplements and different kinds of things. That would sort of freak me out. But the success stories I liked. After that was Benzo Buddies. I went to Benzo Buddies, and that was pretty good. I was starting to feel decent then. I could tell like maybe I'm going to get better. Printed a few more success stories there, but on Benzo Buddies, I was there mostly to help people. There were a number of people who were suffering very, very badly for a very long time, and somehow I decided I want to go to these people's blogs and try to help them out. So most of my time there was helping people instead of getting help. And then after that, I discovered the Facebook groups. By the time I discovered them, I was actually doing pretty well. So I went on there and did some posting and so forth to help people. So that's what it was for the forums. They're all very validating, but they were distractions. When you're validated, you know that there are people going through this too. Because for the longest time, I thought I was going crazy. It was nice to know I wasn't the only one going crazy. There were others too. Reading, I could not read. I could read nothing. I couldn't read. I tried to read a John Grisham book, and I got part way through. I liked John Grisham, but I just couldn't do it. There were other very simple, almost pamphlets that I just couldn't do. I couldn't focus. But I could read anything related to benzos and suffering. I could read. I remember downloading Jack Hobson DuPont's book, the Benzo book, and I read it in one night. It's a couple hundred pages, I guess. I read that in one night in just a few hours because I could relate to it. Like he was on Xanax for a few years. He went through a pretty slow taper. He was still sick for a good while after that, and it was validation. I read that one very quickly, but generally I could not read even the Bible. Early in my withdrawal, I could read like the Psalms in the Bible because they're comforting, but after a while it was like they were condemning me almost, and I felt I just couldn't read the Bible anymore. So what else did I do here? I would try to watch movies in the evening with my wife. That was difficult. I couldn't have the sound up very high. Had trouble following stories, plots, and sometimes like when the movies were like there was happiness going on and people were smiling and laughing, it would freak me out. It would depress me. It's like, will I ever be like that again? I knew my depression was so bad. I thought, I don't know that I was ever happy like that, and if I was kidding myself. And it even got worse that I thought these people can't possibly feel that good in these movies. They're faking it. No one feels that good. I just thought everyone has to be faking it. I thought it's not possible to feel good. So that's kind of how movies went. There were some movies that were just distressing. The bottom line was they were distressing. She had got one time where the theme was about an alcoholic, and like it was just from the beginning it was just not good. And she turned that one off after a few minutes because it was just too much for me. I couldn't handle it. Let's see what else. I did quite a few things. On Wednesdays I would go. We have a food pantry at our church, and first we go like to the area food bank and get the food out of the warehouse. We take it back to the church. We have a room where there's a food pantry for people to come in on every other Saturday, and we would stock the food pantry. My wife and a friend of ours and I would do this. And my friend, I would ride with him. We would fill up his van at the food bank, and I would ride with him back to the church. And he had gone through some kind of withdrawal years earlier, and so I would whine to him all the time. Oh, I can't do this. When's this going to be over? He would just laugh at me, like, because he knew, like, he would say, well, it'll be over when it's over. Well, how many more months? And he would just laugh, and somehow that comforted me. And he had also when he lived in Virginia, there was a hospital at the University of Virginia, I think. He actually sat in the psych wards with people and like he would sit and talk with them and help them and calm them down. So he kind of knew what I was going through. He had seen this before, so that was a big asset for me. Anyway, back to the food pantry itself. We would unload the stuff, the food at the food pantry, and I would be in this derealized, dizzy state. And they would put the food on the shelves, and I would break down the boxes, the cardboard boxes. And I remember that was the time of day where I had probably my most intrusive thoughts. It was horrible. I would have some of the nastiest thoughts. But anyway, too, like we would get eggs sometimes. We would usually get 30 dozen eggs, and they wouldn't be in the 12 egg containers. It would be like these gigantic boxes. And for a while, the three of us would take them out of the big box and put them in the little 12 egg containers. And I remember one day they're putting the food on the shelves. I'm caught up with the boxes. I thought, I'm going to go over there and do the eggs myself. And so I did. I remember I was shaking and it was confusing to me, and I could hardly even physically do it, but I did it. I didn't break any eggs, and that was kind of like that was a big plus for me. It was like I did something. I actually did something on my own. I took the incentive, did it. I didn't hurt anything. I didn't break anything. So that the food pantry, it was hard. It was like torture doing it, but it was another one of those things. My only option then would be to stay at home and by myself and go through this. So it was a way to kill time. Okay, success stories. I've talked about this a lot. Every day, 3 o'clock, success stories. That was one of the highlights of my day. Probably the biggest highlight. Really, it was a time where I could get a little hope. It was a time where like the light shine a little bit. Okay, the biggie for me was latch hooking. I've talked about this a lot, written about it a lot. The wall hanging behind me is one of them. I did that was one of the bigger ones. I probably did 50 or more wall hangings when I was in withdrawal. Thousands of hours, like little pieces of yarn, just one after the other, very, very repetitive, very mindless. At first, I had done latch hooking years ago, and I was really, really fast at it, but I had forgotten. It was like my brain forgot how to do it. I remember when I started again, when I was in withdrawal, I had to look at the picture, and I couldn't. It would take me like a minute to do one piece of yarn. I couldn't, and I did that for like a long time. I would like have to concentrate and focus a lot on one piece. And I remember one day, all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I wasn't even thinking. I just started doing it the old way. It was a lot different way. I just started doing it. It was like that part of my memory kicked back in. And I was happy about that because that's probably a sign of me getting better. So anyway, I did a lot of latch hooking, and that killed a lot of time. It really did. As I started getting better, I designed my own wall hangings. There's a pregnancy center nearby. I designed like these little wall hangings, like they were pink and blue, like for mothers, from their babies. I love my mommy or something like that. I designed those. And that was kind of cool, and I actually enjoyed it. I designed some bigger ones too. I would listen to music when I latch hooked, and when I was really bad in withdrawal, it would have to be real low, and it didn't really give me pleasure. It just gave me the sense that somebody else was there with me. But as I got well, I would turn the music up, and I actually enjoyed my time doing that. So that was another sign that I was getting well. I vacuumed every Friday. That was nearly impossible. It was torture, but I did it for like 2 years. I remember one time vacuuming this room here, and then I went upstairs with a vacuum. I remember falling and hitting my shin. It was the beginning of my withdrawal, and I started crying. It was horrible. I thought, I'm never, ever, ever going to be well again. I can't even go up the stairs with a vacuum. It was very, very, I remember that very well. It was very vivid to me. I thought, I'm hopeless. I can't do this. Okay, let me see. I painted this family room at one time in my withdrawal. It was about probably 5 months, 6 months off. That was torture. The taping and all the painting. Shook. I remember I was dizzy and confused. I went to church most weeks. That was very, very difficult. But it was something to do. It was like I can remember in the mornings before church, I would stand and look out the front window thinking, how am I going to do this? Maybe I should stay home, but then immediately, but if I stay home, I'm stuck here alone by myself and I'm not going to feel any better. So I went to church most of the time. One thing that I don't think I've ever actually mentioned, most nights I would have ice cream or frozen yogurt. That gave me some sort of nice pleasure. It was just the coolness of it. It's like nice and smooth and slide right down. It was like 10 minutes of like really a lot of pleasure for me. I know a lot of people can't. They can't handle the sugar and so forth in ice cream, but I don't know if it revved me up or not. I was willing to take that risk because it did provide something that the only other time I felt anything decent was when I read success stories. So the ice cream helped me, and that killed some time. I would sit in the room with the computer and look out. We have a bird feeder out front. I would watch the birds. It kind of depressed me, but it was something to do. I would like list the different kinds of birds that would come to it. But they look so happy. They're flying around. They're free, and I was kind of like in the cage inside of my head. But I still did it just to pass time. In the springtime, I did yard work. I remember I was about 7 months off. It was March, and my wife's cousin was here changing the shingles on the house. They're taking the shingles off and putting new ones on in this huge roll-off container out front. So I decided I was going to remove some shrubs and trim the forsythias out back that I hadn't trimmed in 3 years, and it looked like a jungle. And I remember going out and shaking, and I could barely even sit still to do it, but I did it just to kill time. I remember I was so incredibly dizzy doing that. And I remember her cousin coming down and talking to me in the backyard, and I had no clue what he was saying. I just stood there and shook my head. Yeah. I didn't even know who he was. He's actually my second cousin too. It's just I knew he was on the roof, but I didn't know who he was. So that was pretty weird. But I did yard. I did anything in the yard that I could do. After the 7th month, I would go out a good bit into the yard and dig up the shrub beds and different kinds of things just to get out. To me, it was kind of like a momentary victory. To me, it's psychological. For me, it was psychological. I know for a lot of people, it's probably not this way. It was like, I haven't given up. I'm still trying. I would not allow myself to, and it was hard not to. I mean, every day I wanted to stay in bed. I really, really did. But there was just, my wife helped with that for sure. But I just would not allow. I don't know what it was. I couldn't do that. So I kept trying to do things. In the summer, I mowed. I've talked about this before. I would water the flowers. We had huge impatiens in the summer. They were gigantic. I would go in the afternoon. I would read my success stories. I would typically fall asleep for a little bit, wake up in terror, and after about 20 minutes, when I could do it, I would get up and I would go outside and water the flowers. That's when I did that. In the winter, I shoveled snow. I remember 6 years ago at this time, on the Friday, it would have been 6 years since I got out of the psych hospital. It was starting to snow when I got out, and we had this gigantic snowstorm. And I remember going out and shoveling. I was just in another world, but I remember doing that. And that winter, it snowed a good bit, and I actually made myself go out and shovel. And it was very hard, but it passed time. It's just something that helps to pass time. I know, like, a lot of these things are difficult. You think, like, well, I can't. But it does pass time. You don't feel any better. I don't think it makes withdrawal going faster, but it's passing time. It's like, I got the time. The time is your friend. It feels like your enemy, but it's actually your friend. Because as time passes, you are getting better. Like, the intrinsic healing is happening. It just doesn't feel like it. And that's, they're the ones I can think of. There probably are quite a few more, but the point of most of this for me, like, it killed time, and I tried really hard not to just be idle. When I sat by myself and didn't do anything, nothing good happened in my head. I would get like these really, the suicidal ideation and all that, just depression. And Oh, I'm never going to be well. There's no point to life. There's no meaning. So for me, the distractions, they got me through time, and there was something psychological about them. It's like, I'm not going to give up. I can't. I just can't. I can't. And I know a lot of people probably have a lot more physical stuff going on. They can't do everything that I did. And I had a lot of physical pain, believe me, but not. And I've seen some people, what they go through is just, I didn't have that. I just didn't. I didn't have the horrendous pain. So I'm at 25 minutes. I hope this isn't too long. I'm going to cut out here now. Groundhog Day will be over. The official one will be over soon. So I'll sign off here. I know it's hard. You're going to get through this. And I pray for you all, and I wish you all, like a window and healing. And it's coming. You are healing. It's just taking some time, but you're going to get there. Take care, and I'll see you next time.